Ecuador's National Court of Justice has ordered the capture of former President Rafael Correa. The high-level general debate of the 75th session of the United Nations General Assembly continues this Thursday under the theme "The Future We Want, the United Nations We Need." More than 1 million people have been affected by recent floods in Ethiopia. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, and I'm Katrina Goss. Ecuador's National Court of Justice ordered the capture of former President Rafael Correa, who was sentenced to 8 years in prison on bribery and corruption charges. The arrest warrant also applies to former Vice President Jorge Glass and other former senior officials. After ratifying the sentence, Judge Ivan Leon ordered that the arrest warrant be sent to the National Electoral Council to prevent Correa from being able to stand in the 2021 elections, as a leftist leader cannot take part in electoral processes for a time equal to that established in the sentence. The Lenin Moreno administration also ordered the withdrawal of the life pension that Correa was receiving in his capacity as a former president of the Republic. The move is yet another in a series to prevent Correa from returning to politics in his home country. Foreign ministers of the Community of Latin American and Caribbean states held their 20th meeting this Thursday via video conference due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The meeting was chaired by Mexican Foreign Secretary Marcelo Ebrard in Mexico's condition as President pro tempore of the community. Following an initiative presented by Paraguay with the co-sponsorship of Argentina, Ecuador, the Dominican Republic and Uruguay, member states unanimously agreed to extend Mexico's pro tempore presidency until 2021, in a move to provide continuity to the current projects contained in the bloc's work plan. Likewise, community foreign ministers also adopted the special declaration on the question of the Malvinas Islands, while calling for the resumption of negotiations and the achievement of a peaceful and definitive solution on the matter. Founded in 2010, CELAC is the most representative forum in the region, bringing together the 33 countries of Latin America and the Caribbean. The Americas remains the epicenter of the COVID-19 pandemic, although the region is already registering a fall in the number of daily deaths, while Europe is experiencing a dangerous second wave. The number of deaths per day in the Americas began to decrease in recent days to below 3,000, representing welcome relief considering that the disease has already caused over 533,000 fatalities in the region. In its report on Wednesday, the World Health Organization noted that the daily death rate was slowly falling in the Americas, while in Europe it has remained stable since June at around 500,000 COVID-19 related deaths per day. The number of people stranded in other countries who have returned to Nicaragua since COVID-19 was declared a pandemic in March has now reached more than 60,000, the Interior Ministry reported. 312 Nicaraguans arrived in the country from Panama on Monday evening, to total over 60,000 citizens who've returned to the nation in the last 6 months. Some 4,500 of these Nicaraguans have returned from Panama. According to the Cuban education minister, the schools that have reopened in the country have not reported COVID-19 transmission events. Education Minister Ana Elsa Velázquez noted that to date, schools are free of the virus despite outbreaks in 10 Cuban provinces. She stressed that isolation measures are swiftly taken in the face of situations arising in local communities to ensure the virus does not spread to educational facilities. Several provinces and territories, including Havana, have not resumed classes due to the continued high rate of COVID-19 transmission. The COVID-19 pandemic has forced many major cultural events to rethink how they're held. The Gibara International Film Festival, held every year in Cuba, is an example. In order to keep the spirit of this event alive, the organising committee decided to make use of social media and online possibilities of the festival to run from September 25th to 26th. Our correspondent Fabiola Lopez has the story.
It is said that Gibara is a film-worthy city. Those who believe that this year, because of the pandemic, the movie party in the Cuban eastern white town would be forgotten were wrong. The traditional film festival, now under new circumstances, became an opportunity for creation.
We asked them to do the work on the pandemic, on the isolation following the biosecurity measures, and people sent their short films.
The call to the filmmakers was to tell stories on and from the quarantine. 86 audiovisual files were received and 23 were selected to be shown in the official accounts of the Gibara International Film Festival on the social networks Facebook, Instagram and YouTube.
It has been very interesting to see the thematic range and the variety of ideas, even in a situation as restrictive as this using a single set at home. Even in these conditions, filmmakers reflect on big issues such as death, loneliness, love, life, company, or even humor from funny or tragical situations, even of terror. Human beings are social beings, and in a situation like this, it leads you to explore new corners of your mind and spirituality.
Filmmakers from 19 countries, most in Latin America and Europe, sent their work to Inaction. Among them, the famous Cuban actor Vladimir Cruz, now also a movie maker.
The short was filmed in Madrid during the confinement, and my 7-year-old daughter, Julieta, had the leading role. Madrid was a city, unfortunately, heavily hit by the pandemic, and therefore the confinement was very severe. So my motivation was seeing my daughter locked in the house for 2 months and wanting to go out to ride a bike or at least to breathe.
From her home in quarantine with a telephone camera, her computer, and actors from her own family, the novel filmmaker Fabiana Lopez didn't want to lose the opportunity to respond to the call for Gibara's Film Festival, the ideal platform for showing her work.
The short film is about a girl who is afraid of silence, which is like the word phobia, and she is afraid of facing loneliness. That is why she is thinking about drifting off, looking for escaping from herself. I would like to thank my cousin who works in the theater company El Público. She is the star of this film. And to Sergio Aguino, a Cuban-Bolivian singer who gave me one of his songs to use it for the first time. And to the Gibara Film Festival for creating this opportunity.
In the virtual scenario of Inaction, online showing of microcinema in isolation, the series All Roads Led to Cinema will be premiered. In the talk show, Cuban filmmakers, musicians, visual artists, writers and playwrights talk about their connections with the seventh art. The users will also be able to enjoy the music of Kelvis Ochoa and Aide Milanés, who will stream their concerts on Facebook Live on September 25th and 26th.
Fabiola López, TeleSUR, La Habana.
This Thursday, the high-level general debate of the 75th session of the United Nations General Assembly continued. Under the theme, The Future We Want, the United Nations We Need, heads of state and government have been addressing the UN virtually for the first time in its history due to the global health crisis sparked by the COVID-19 pandemic. World leaders are discussing the most pressing issues and suggesting ways to jointly come up with effective solutions. Among the most important topics under debate are climate change, the coronavirus pandemic, poverty, peace and stability.
This body more effective and legitimate.
On Thursday, the President of Botswana opened his speech to the United Nations by expressing his condolences to all families affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, while making reference to increasing poverty and the existential threat posed by climate change.
Allow me therefore to extend our heartfelt condolences and sympathies to families and friends throughout the world who have been affected by the pandemic. I also pay special tribute to all those in the front line of this battle. Poverty eradication. Mr. President, it is noted that before the pandemic, an estimated 783 million people were living in extreme poverty globally. However, as of June 2020, the World Bank predicted that the pandemic could push an additional 71 million people into extreme poverty in 2020, therefore reversing the gains made in recent decades. Certainly this turn of events demands our urgent collective action if we are to eradicate poverty in all its multidimensional forms, everywhere and for everyone affected by 2030. While COVID-19 is a devastating pandemic which caught the world unaware and ill-prepared, climate change is a phenomenon we are well aware of and can mitigate against its repercussions. We long declared climate change an existential threat and committed to restrain its rapid devastation. We should therefore redouble our efforts to mitigate its negative effects.
And also addressing the high-level general debate of the 75th session of the United Nations General Assembly this Thursday, the President of the Republic of Guinea said that the world needs multilateralism and a reformed UN in order to fulfill the Sustainable Development Goals.
And it challenges us as never before. The central role of the United Nations and its leadership means it is incumbent on all of us to promote and to strengthen multilateralism. The world is increasingly interdependent, and no state can face these many and various challenges alone. More than ever before, the world needs a reformed organisation, a strong organisation, working on the basis of the values of the Charter and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that can work through its specialised institutions to facilitate peace, sustainable development and health. It is 75 years since the UN was created, and we can state that it has been able to respond to the expectations of the Founding Fathers in their efforts to spare future generations the scourge of a Third World War, to promote peace, and to develop friendship and cooperation between nations. Strengthened, renewed international governance should better take into consideration the interests of developing countries, in particular in implementing the SDGs. Guinea welcomes the SDG Decade of Action, which means that we should review our aspirations upwards and accelerate the implementation of appropriate and lasting solutions to poverty, gender inequality, conflict, climate change and the financing gap in the implementation of the SDGs.
The United States has seen massive protests once again after charges were filed against only one police officer involved in the fatal shooting of 26-year-old black woman Breonna Taylor. Demonstrators took to the streets across the nation from New York to Boston, Washington to Los Angeles. Taylor's name has become a rallying cry of the Black Lives Matter movement. Out of the 3 officers involved, only one was charged. Detective Brett Hankinson was charged by a grand jury with 3 counts of wanton endangerment. But neither Hankinson nor the 2 other officers who fired the shots that killed Taylor were charged in direct connection. And the biggest demonstration was seen in Louisville, where Taylor was killed in March. Thousands of people took to the streets following the announcement.
And we were not happy with the results. Us as a city, me as a person personally, it's not okay. So I'm here to show my support because I don't want this to keep happening, first of all. And I don't know. It's heartbreaking because we can't keep getting murdered on the street. I'm mixed and I have a lot of black friends. I have any color friends. So if this can keep happening and they don't stand for it, when will it ever stop? So that's why we're out here protesting, because it has to stop. It's not right. It's not okay. So
the whole day has been emotional. It's been kind of crazy. Emotion's been everywhere. Everybody's been on edge, been anticipating it. But when I first found out about it, I just felt like the city of Louisville, the city I grew up in, failed black women today. They failed black women miserably, and it spoke all across the nation. And
on Thursday, the Chinese government said U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's remarks warning U.S. politicians to be alert to Chinese diplomats who could woo them as part of Beijing's propaganda and espionage campaign are pure lies.
The Chinese embassy and consulates in the United States and various organizations have always acted in accordance with international law and bilateral agreements between China and the United States. Their interactions with governments at all levels in the United States are aimed at promoting mutual understanding, exchanges and cooperation between the 2 countries. Pompeo's remarks ignore the facts and are pure lies. China firmly opposes this. China once again urges Pompeo and the likes of him to abandon the Cold War mentality and ideological prejudice, respect the facts, stop fabricating all kinds of lies about China, and stop disrupting normal Sino-US exchanges and cooperation.
The Russian Foreign Ministry announced on Wednesday a meeting next Monday between Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and Cuba's Deputy Prime Minister Ricardo Cabrizas to discuss the deepening of their ties and issues on the global agenda. During the meeting, the strengthening of the strategic partnership between the two countries in the political, economic, commercial and cultural humanitarian areas will be analysed. In addition, the meeting will take into account the results of the Intergovernmental Commission between both nations and crucial issues on the regional and global agenda. The coordination of efforts in the international arena will be addressed, including the fight against illegitimate pressure through US sanctions against the island. More than 1 million people have been affected by recent floods in Ethiopia, most of them forced to leave their homes. According to records compiled so far by the National Disaster Risk Management Commission and territorial offices, Ogaden, Afar, Amhara and Oromia are the states most affected by heavy rainfall, although floods were reported in all regions, including the cities of Addis Ababa and Diridara. In Ogaden alone, in the eastern part of the country, at least 300,000 people have been affected and 200,000 displaced. Barnador, a retired colonel and former defence minister who's been designated Mali's interim president following last month's coup, made his first public appearance on Thursday, meeting a regional mediator. The president-designate met former Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan in Bamako, representing a delegation of the Economic Community of West African States on the eve of his swearing-in. Nador's appointment was announced on Monday by Colonel Assimi Goita, who heads the military junta of young officers who seized power on August 18th, ousting elected President Ibrahim Boubacar Keita. Goita himself will serve as vice president. The interim president will rule for a maximum of 18 months before staging nationwide elections. Angola reported 127 new COVID-19 cases and 4 deaths, with Luanda province as the epicenter. The Secretary of State for Public Health, Dr. Franco Mafinda, explained that in the last 24 hours there were 4 deaths, while there were 11 recovered patients. During the usual press briefing, the expert detailed that all the recent 127 COVID-19 patients were from Luanda. Angola has accumulated over 4,000 COVID-19 cases, including 159 deaths. The European Union's top migration officials struggled on Thursday to sell to parliamentarians their new plan to overhaul the bloc's failed asylum system, which hinges on rapidly deporting people who don't qualify as refugees and persuading African countries to stop them from coming. The proposals, dubbed the New Pact for Migration and Asylum, are aimed at ending years of chaos at Europe's borders and a political crisis that has seen some EU countries turn their backs on Greece, Italy, Malta and Spain, where most people running away from wars and hunger enter. It has already received a cautious welcome from Austria, the Czech Republic and Hungary, whose anti-migrant governments, along with those of Poland and Slovakia, refused to bow to pressure to take in refugees and ease the load on their Mediterranean coastal partners. Germany, France, Greece and Italy see the pact as a good basis to negotiate on.
And let's name the elephant in the room before I go into the details. The refuseniks have won. Blocking has been rewarded, and the Council, by insisting on unanimity where it was not required, effectively allowed anti-migration forces to write our migration policies. But we have to be pragmatic and look ahead, as we urgently need solutions. Now, this package is not perfect. I think everybody will recognize that, and some parts cross the pain threshold of many of us. But I would like to remind colleagues that the only available alternative is the current situation.
No, solidarity and responsibility have to be seen at the same basis, at the same level of ambition. I repeat that we have a system that makes sense. I'm not asking you to like it. I'm asking you to understand it. And we will need time to discuss this.
Appreciate you being here to the final end of this point that has been slotted.
On July 25th, a cargo ship loaded with thousands of tons of fuel ran aground off Mauritius, leading to the worst environmental disaster ever witnessed in a tiny Indian Ocean archipelago. 2 months later, Mauritius is still taking stock of the damage after its rich fishing grounds and sensitive marine habitats were befouled with oil. The MV Wakashio, a Japanese-owned but Panamanian-flagged bulk carrier, was sailing from Singapore to Brazil with over 3,000 tonnes of fuel oil and 200 tonnes of diesel on board when it struck a reef off the southeast coast of Mauritius. Now we've come to the end of this news brief, but remember you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And you can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Katrina Goss, and thank you for watching.